Hello. Thanks for joining me in what I hope is going to be the first in a series that I'm going to call Cool Things People Do With Their Dogs. And today we're going to be discussing IGP. Instead of me just essentially reading the rules of IGP to you, I thought it would be awesome to bring in someone else to help me explain it, someone that's been involved in the sport for a long time.
Hi,
Meet Michelle, who's one of Australia's top IGP competitors.
my name is Michelle Daniel. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I have been involved in the sport of IGP for 21 years now.
Throughout the next little while and through Michelle's eyes, we're going to come to understand what the sport of IGP entails. The first thing we should probably understand is, what does IGP actually stand for? And it turns out it's three German words that I can't pronounce, so I've enlisted the help of my friend Bertie.
IGP stands for Internationale Gebrauchshundeprüfung, which translates to International Working Practical Dog Test.
IGP was formerly called IPO, which is another three German words that I can't pronounce, and before that, Schutzen. So don't be surprised if, as we continue, people accidentally say IPO. It's only changed to IGP a couple of years ago.
IGP is a dog sport which consists of three different phases. We have tracking, we have obedience, and we have protection work. You start with a BH title.
BH also stands for a couple of German words that I can't pronounce, so here's Bertie again.
BH stands for Begleithundeprüfung, Companion Dog Test.
And that's basically a temperament test for the dog. The dog must do obedience on lead, off lead, with various exercises. And then the dog has to do a traffic test, which is basically testing that the dog can be fine around people, can be fine around other dogs, basically is a social dog. Once the dog gets their BH title, they can then go on to do an IPO one, which then consists of all three titles.
So as Michelle's just explained, IGP has kind of a gateway test called the BH. And that is an obedience exam as well as a sociability traffic test where they're checking really the temperament of the dog. I personally think the BH is one of the harder tests because it has a very long duration but not many behaviours. So a lot of people spend quite a long time training for the BH, and when they have that, they're actually very quickly ready for the ongoing parts of the test. The three phases that IGP is conducted in, with the obedience, the protection and the tracking, they don't necessarily have to be done in that order. In fact, at a competition, they can change the order of them. That's no big deal. But in order to achieve the title, you have to pass all three phases. Let's start with talking about tracking.
The tracking phase, which is usually done in the morning, because we need a fresh field where people haven't walked all over the field with their dogs and so forth. The dogs are following human footsteps and they have to find wood, leather or carpet articles along the way. The tracks vary. IGP 1, it'd be laid and down for 20 minutes. IGP 2, the track is laid and left down for 30 minutes. And then IGP 3, which is the highest level, the track is laid and is left down for 1 hour. And basically the dog's on a 10-metre lead, the handler is behind the dog, and the dog must check each footstep and indicate on each article.
The difference between IGP tracking and, let's say, police style tracking is that the dogs must find every single footstep. They're not allowed to lift their head. When they deviate from the track, you actually lose points. So the dog must be fully concentrated and they must track slow and methodically. Whereas police dogs, they can track absolutely flat out, they can lift their heads, whereas IGP dogs can't. So it's actually not really natural tracking. We're sort of forcing them to check every single footstep, which is quite difficult. And also they have to go slow to find the articles, whereas police dogs, let's say, they have to find an offender. So it's completely different in that respect. So IGP, it's extremely difficult. The corners are very sharp, and that makes it a lot more difficult. They're a 90-degree angle, whereas before they sort of used to be a little bend, which made it easier for the dog. So it's sort of getting a little bit harder now, but you can't compare this tracking to police-style tracking. I believe that they start off the same way of the imprinting, of searching the footsteps, but also they do hard surface tracking, where we don't do hard surface tracking. It's very strict, so I guess there's an element of obedience there, because they're not allowed to go fast, because we make sure that they check every footstep. So in a way, that is an obedience. We're not just letting them go on 10 metres and just go off and search and air scent. We can't do that. So follow the track, find the articles, and be as accurate as possible, because in tracking there's a lot of points lost for the dogs getting lost on the corners, for deviating off the track, or if they don't indicate on an article. So there's a lot of points to lose. So the hours spent in tracking is huge. If you don't spend the hours, you don't pass. So it takes a good few years to get your dog to that high level of tracking. Imprinting from a puppy.
Now let's look into the obedience section.
When we talk about the obedience phase for IGP, IGP 1, 2 and 3 are all done off lead. The dog has to show healing. The dog has to show attentiveness to the handler, which usually means we get the focus from the dog, because the dog needs to be happy. You need to look like a team, harmonious with each other. There's retrieving and there's a send away. And basically that obedience, the routine goes for usually around 10 minutes. And there's also, when someone is doing their obedience, there'll be another dog in a long down. So basically the dog has to stay in the down 30 paces away from the handler, and the handler has their back turned to the dog. There's also gunshots in IGP 1, 2 and 3, and that's just to test that the dog is not gun shy, is not nervous of loud noises. Basically a temperament test.
Basically, the judges are looking for willingness to work, the harmony between the dog and the handler, which is usually having that focus and that happy healing. The dog needs to be really attentive to the handler. And that's probably, one of the hardest parts. But through Drive, we create that in the dog and they love it. With the obedience, we do the motion, depending on which level you're doing, but once you hit IGP level, you've got the motion exercises, which is sit on the move, down on the move, recall, and then of course we've got the retrieves, which is basically a 650 gram dumbbell, and the dog must sit whilst you throw it out, dog must retrieve it, bring it back. The hardest part about dumbbells is they want to see no mouthing on the dumbbell, sitting very nice and calm in front. It looks easy once you've trained it and you watch an experienced dog do it, but the teaching of it is actually quite difficult. Teaching a high drive dog to hold something in its mouth and be nice and calm, that's difficult for a lot of dogs, for a lot of people. So with the dumbbells, you have on the flat, then you have a 1 metre jump. The dog can't touch the jump. Again, you lose points. It's all about points. And you have the A-frame, which stands, I think it's 1.6 metres in height. And again, that's another exercise that's quite hard to teach because you don't want the dog jumping off the top of the A-frame. It can be dangerous that way. And then the very last exercise is a send away. So basically heeling about 15 paces, sending the dog out, and when the judge instructs you to down your dog, you're to yell out down. The dog must down immediately, and then you go and pick up the dog. So that whole routine runs for about 10 minutes. So within that 10 minutes, you've got to keep the dog in drive, make sure he's interested, make sure he's still with you. And the other thing too is, whilst one person's doing their obedience, there's another dog in a long down.
In the IGP 3, you have to be in the blind so that you're out of sight for the dog. So in training, I can look through these little holes up here and spy on him. He's usually pretty good in his long down, but always need to practice.
So basically the obedience, it's perfect, it's precise. And to get that precision, it's really difficult. So as a trainer, you're always thinking outside the box with different dogs because different dogs have different drives, and they work for different things, some for food, some for a ball, some for a tug. So as a trainer, you're always looking for, various methods that you can use with various dogs. But I think it's really challenging, and the obedience is challenging. It's a lot of work. Again, you've got to put in the hours to get the result.
Now let's talk about the protection phase.
The protection phase is, again, different levels, different exercises. So an IGP 1 protection, the rules have now changed to where the dog only has to search the blind that the helper is in. They find the helper, they do a hold and bark. You then must be able to control your dog, do a call out or pick the dog up. And then there's a little bit of healing for an escape. And basically, once the dog is on the sleeve, what the judges are looking for are good grips. They're also looking for speed when they chase the helper. They are looking for strong character in the dog, and also that the dog can be under control. So once the dog does bite the sleeve, the handler should be able to tell their dog to out, and basically the dog lets go of the sleeve, and then of course the control comes back into it. The IPO 2 is pretty much the same, but the dog has to search 4 blinds. And IPO 3, the dog has to search 6 blinds. And there are more exercises within the IGP 3 protection. There is a back transport, and the courage test is a lot longer. So IGP 3 is the hardest one, and it's the longest protection routine run out.
Like most sections of the dog world, people in IGP come from really diverse backgrounds. In fact, there's people from, all walks of life that share this common hobby, interest, and game that they play with their dog. And Michelle's club's no different. It's a really big club, and they were really inviting to me and helped me tremendously, not just getting footage for this, but telling me about their sport and their experience with Michelle.
I have a very large club. Our club consists of, I think, about 20 members. We have all different breeds of dogs, Malinois, Rottweilers, Dobermans, German Shepherds, so big variety. Most of the dogs in our club now have a title, which is a huge achievement. In the last 3 years, we've achieved about 18 BHs alone, along with various IGP titles. So our club has been pretty successful. We're a very close-knit group of people. In the sport of IGP, you need a really good club around you because you can't train this on your own. You need to have people spotting you. It's hard to watch yourself train. It's impossible. So you need that group of people that are there for you to help you, and vice versa. And it's not just in obedience, tracking. You need people to help you with that as well, and of course the protection. So it's not a one-man sport, and that's what I love about our club. Everyone, they're on their feet, they're ready to help out, and they're keen.
I was started in ANKC obedience. Started training with Michelle with a more motivational style of training. Loved it. Needed to know more about it. Then got introduced to the sport. I was hooked. Absolutely hooked.
So I have show Dobermans, but on another hand, they're also working dogs. And my goal is to prove that they can be both show and working. And I'm aiming to have a first show champion with an IGP title in Australia. Nobody has done that before.
This is Quincy. She's our very special girl. Quincy, in December of 2019, gained her IGP3 title. She's also a therapy dog. So she, with my husband, goes into local nursing homes and works with dementia patients. They find that she's really good because, unlike some of the smaller dogs, she's at the height where they can pat. She's done choir practice and she's played bingo and she's done everything, and she's also got an IGP3 title.
Favorite part about the club is the camaraderie, the team, the support, and the experience.
IGP has pretty much changed my life, and it's changed my career aspects. I'm now a professional dog trainer. I work for a company that we develop dogs for different government departments. That is a part of my job. And without IGP, I wouldn't have had the experience for this job. So it has given me a definite career path, a really good understanding of different training methods, different dogs. So for me, it's been something that I pretty much live my life by. IGP, for me, it's a lifestyle. It's not a hobby.
Let's talk about the social aspect in that this is your job.
Yes.
This is your hobby.
Yes.
And most of your friends are within this space.
Yeah.
It seems to have essentially, it consumes your life, right? Like you are not just a person who plays IGP for some fun on the weekend.
No, it becomes your life. It's a lifestyle. The early mornings, training late at night, can be pouring down with rain and you're out there with your dogs. It's really crazy. We are crazy, but it's the people that you have around you as well. I mean, everyone in our club, they're all friends because we spend so much time together. So you start becoming like a little family, and that's what our club is. We're a family because we train 2 nights a week, and then we might track 3 days a week. We see more of the people in the club than we do our own family. So for me, it's very social. I've met so many people through my job. I've made a lot of friends. It's great. It's really good. It gets you out there and it gets you meeting people like me and you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the training director of the club. Do you carry that title? Do you guys use that title?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that go? Like you're essentially doing your job for free for a bunch of people outside of the hours.
Yep. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But for me, I love training people. I love to be able to support people, and I love watching people succeed. And in this sport, because it is such a hard sport and you dedicate so much of your time to it, it's an accomplishment for me to see somebody start with a puppy and then 2 years later they're doing an IGP title. And so for me, I don't care that I don't get paid for it. It's my passion. I want to help people. And of course, people help me too. This sport, you cannot do it on your own at all. You need people to spot you, to watch you, all the temperament testing stuff. You need people for that. So there's no way that you can do it on your own. It just doesn't happen.
I really want to highlight the role that Michelle plays within her club as the master coach of the club. They're a really successful club here in Sydney, and I believe, much of their success comes down to that coaching and, her oversight. Whenever I was at training, you look at all that footage that you just saw of them training, Michelle's always there in the background with every single person, giving tips and advice, but letting them also sort of go on their own journey and just sort of giving them the nudges along the way rather than standing over them and just sort of demanding it's this way or the highway. So that was really cool and awesome to see. And I think, like I say, I think that's a big part of why their club is successful. Now I want to talk to you about the dogs involved in the sport. And I thought, again, the best way for you to understand the way that the people involved in IGP love their dogs, care for their dogs, and their selection criteria of their dogs is to hear it from Michelle and to hear it about her dog.
Currently, I have a Malinois. His name is Maddox. He's 5 years old. I haven't had him since he was a puppy. The company that I work for was going to bring him in for the military. And I saw a video of him before he arrived in Australia, and he'd had his IGP1 title. I saw the video and for whatever reason, absolutely fell in love with the dog. I had no idea what he was like, just as a pet. But I really liked his work. There was just something about him. So I kind of conned my boss into letting me have him and, promised him I'd do all the training and do as much as I can with him. And he agreed to it. And when I met the dog, I had no idea what type of dog he was. I had no clue. And he arrived and put the lead on him, took him home, and we sat on the couch for about an hour just having a little cuddle and getting to know each other. And he's turned out to be probably the best dog I've ever owned. He was born in France. He was then imported to Germany, and then he's come from Germany to Australia to me. So I've been training him for probably just over 3 years now. As I said, he had his IGP1 title before he came. So I just had to basically train him up for the IGP2 and IGP3. And it was interesting. I've never trained a dog before that I hadn't trained from a puppy. I've always had dogs from a puppy. So having a dog that had already had training done was actually quite hard because I didn't know how he was trained. I didn't know how they rewarded him. I didn't know all his commands, and we didn't know each other. So it did take a couple of months to get to know each other and to have that bond. We did bond quite quickly. And probably about 3 months after I got him, I did an IGP2 at a nationals event, and we got highest in obedience, which was fabulous because I'd had the dog for only 3 months, and we were still getting to know each other. So I was pretty happy with that. And then I did his IGP3, and that's when he qualified for the World Championships. And his training has just gotten better and better. 3 years now, we understand each other, and he absolutely loves me and I love him. And he's the type of dog that I can take in the house. We'll sit on the couch, we'll watch TV together. Very friendly. I have 2 little dogs. He absolutely loves those dogs. So he's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure to have. And I'm just lucky that I got him.
On one of the days I was filming with Michelle, this guy called Gary Pitt had come down from Queensland. He's a dog chiropractor, and he'd come to work on her dog and keep him in top form for upcoming competition. I was fascinated, and I've left much of it in for you to watch here because I think that watching her dog get treated, manipulated, and handled by a relative stranger speaks to the temperament and courage and stability of the type of dogs that are suitable for that sport.
So, Maddox had a shoulder injury about 10, 12 days ago, and he was quite lame in one of the front legs, bit of swelling. I had to crate rest him for about 10 days, so I wasn't able to do any protection work or obedience, so I'd just been tracking for 10 days. It's much better now. I just did a protection session with him and he's running really well. But Gary's a dog chiropractor, manipulator, so he's just going to go over him and check that everything's okay, that his back is good, shoulders are good. He'll go over the whole dog just to see if he can find any issues, and hopefully we won't have any issues because it's not long till the Nationals. So I just want to make sure that when I'm working him, he's 100% good to go, because it's a lot of impact on his body. So I'd prefer to know that he's all good. If there's an issue, hopefully Gary can fix it. So we'll just see what he finds.
Okay.
Bit sore there.
You saw up here
Yep.
through the coccyx.
Okay.
So we'll do his pelvis, and then we'll do the back, and then we'll do his coccyx, which is the hardest one.
Okay. Good boy.
Slightly pull into you.
Good boy. Super. Good man.
Maddie.
Good boy. Nice job.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Yeah. Good boy. What a good boy. Okay. Good job. Good job. Good job.
So we've got the Nationals coming up. It's really exciting because a lot of the Nationals have been cancelled due to COVID. So this is the first Nationals in a couple of years. I'm pretty excited. I haven't trialled my dog Maddox since January 2020. So it's now 2021. And so I'm excited to get him out there to see how my training is going. Usually when I trial, I come away from that trial with ideas of how I can make my training better, because you never really know how well your dog is doing until you get on that trial field, especially with the nerves, a lot of people watching. So for me, it'll be just exciting to see where he's at. Great to catch up with people from all around Australia. We always have a really good time at Nationals, so I'm looking forward to it.
So I travelled up to Queensland for the Nationals, and when I got there, I asked Michelle if she thought she was ready and how she thought she was going to go.
So, who knows? Hopefully we do all right.
Michelle did better than just all right. She placed second in the IGP3, which at a national titles is a huge accomplishment. Cheryl Chaffee took out the highest points in the IGP3, and that's actually her second consecutive year as national champion. So huge congrats to her, and her club actually put on a really great event. They hosted the event up there in Queensland. The competition was judged by Reg Worth, and me and him had this really cool conversation about the history of IGP in Australia, as well as the progressions in training that it's gone through over the years.
I was lucky enough in 2018 to go over to Germany and do the SV foreign judge training over there, and yes, that was a wonderful experience. When I first started back in the 90s, it was mainly a lot of ANKC people that had sort of come over to Schutzen back then, and yeah, to be honest, the obedience was pretty sloppy, and it wasn't until we got Godfrey Dildai was the first seminar that we had, and that was like a light bulb moment for the sport here, as far as getting focus from the dogs and stuff, and since then it's just gone up and up and up.
Shane Azanuma was the lead decoy for the Nationals, and at one point I asked him, why do you do this?
I don't know. It started off as a challenge and then it just gets real. It's what people need, so someone's got to do it.
So no one pays you to be here?
No, they don't.
You came up from Melbourne, right?
No, I'm from Brisbane.
Oh, you are from
Yep.
Brisbane?
Yep.
But you give up your body, your
Yep.
time.
Yep.
Why?
Well, I guess I love the sport, and you know, it's a bit of a passion, and you just sort of get a bit addicted to it.
How long have you been doing this?
It's about 8 years now, and 5 years at sort of the national level. So, yeah.
How'd you get started?
Well, you know, like a lot of people, I guess I wanted an attack dog, and then I sort of fell in love with the sport. And then, you know, there's just a necessity and a lack of helpers in Australia. And, you know, I kind of got encouraged to step in and help out at the club. And then sort of you realise that you can help more people by doing more of it. And then, you know, you just sort of step in and do it more and more.
I'll elaborate and add a little bit to what Shane had to say there, since this is an education piece. And I just want to point out how critically important the decoys and the helpers are in any of the bite sports. Without someone that's willing to put their body on the line, you know, it's a little bit dangerous to do, but it is physically demanding. It's a lot of work, and to keep yourself in shape and keep able to do that and turn up to provide that helper to the clubs, to the competitors, is critically important. In fact, there'd be no sport without it. So, you know, hats off to all those decoys out there that put their bodies on the line so that others can play their sport. On the sidelines of most IGP fields, you'll find Mike Harper from Wild Dog Photography. And the service that he provides is massive. You know, for most people, when they get their title, the action shot of them and their dog while they're competing will have come from Mike. And he's been doing this for a really long time.
12 years doing this.
Where have you been doing it?
Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Italy, and here.
Why do you do this?
Good question. I enjoy the travel and I enjoy the sport, and it helps promote it in Australia where it's very small. We need as much coverage as we can get.
Competing in dog sports can be like a really nerve-wracking thing to do. Your skills are on display, and especially if you're a professional trainer or you are a coach, or even if it's not a professional thing, you are just the training director of your club. It can be a lot of pressure to perform in front of your peers. And what just about everybody has on the sidelines at Nationals is a special support person who helps them prepare with their dog, but prepare mentally and get ready to go onto the field. Michelle's person at Nationals was Melissa Cunningham.
Michelle and I have known each other. I've been part of a club that Michelle's been part of probably for at least 6 years.
Yeah.
And we've spent a lot of time trialling together because we've always been part of small clubs. So usually I would be here trialling as well, and we'd be supporting each other, but my girl's now retired, just tracking now. So I'm just here for Michelle to give her all the support and I guess repay her for all the support that she's given me over the years. Look at that.
Wonderful.
I've done it this morning.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah, so the Nationals, it's always a good experience. There's lots of highs and lots of lows, and I had, it wasn't my best trial, but I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out. My points weren't too bad. Everyone here was really friendly. It was a really well-run national, very organised, and it was good for the competitors because we had plenty of practice on the field, a couple of days out. So overall, it was a fantastic weekend. Tiring. I'm absolutely exhausted with all the early starts and late nights, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked with how the weekend went, and the camaraderie between all the competitors was really good as well. Very supportive, and that's kind of what makes you want to do it again and again, because it is a lot of fun. And it's good to see all the other dogs out there and what people are doing in their training. So, yeah, pretty happy.
So that's it. That's sort of my 50,000 foot view of the sport of IGP, the people that are involved in it and the type of dogs that can play it. I want to give a huge thank you to Michelle for letting me follow her around with a camera in her face for the days and weeks leading up to the national titles. It was my first time doing something like this, and it was probably pretty clunky and annoying for her. But I think having her explain IGP and what it means to her hopefully brings more depth to it and more, a more personal understanding for you, rather than having me just essentially explain the rules to you. Unfortunately, on the last day of Nationals, Sydney actually went into lockdown. So when we came back here, I haven't seen Michelle since the national titles. And there were some little bits and pieces extra that I wanted to add in. But it's my hope that you've got a really good understanding of IGP from the perspective of one of its most important competitors in Australia. Once again, I really want to give a huge thank you to all of you guys for viewing this. I loved putting this together. I had a great time doing it, and I really want to do more. And it's your support that makes all of this possible. So thank you so much.
Well done, competitors. Thank you very much for making it possible.